My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called Fate, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your fate. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of Fate. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I'm very honored to have Reverend Rose Hope with me. She has so many accomplishments. I don't think I can list them all, but she is an award-winning business leader, an entrepreneur. She's a best-selling author, an intuitive. She has her own podcast out called When Spirit Calls. She does television appearances. She is a professional speaking engagements, and she is helping people find their way, their soul purpose. I'm very excited to have her with me today. Reverend Rose Hope, welcome to your fate, my friend. How you doing today?
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. Oh my gosh, as you're going through the list, I'm like, oh yeah, I have done those things. It's a beautiful reminder for us of how far we've come. So thank you.
Thank you. You are a force for good out there. And I really am excited for you to be speaking and telling me your journey today. So thank you again. But I always like to start at the beginning. So how did this all come about for you? Can you tell us a little bit about your spiritual path and how it happened?
Yeah, I would love to. It started when I had my first near death. And so I was 5 years old. I was eating one of those round, hard jawbreaker candies. Do you remember the jawbreakers? That's kind of aging me, but yeah, the jawbreaker candies. And my dad said, go sit down before you choke. And I turned to go sit down and I took a breath and I choked. So my dad came running over. He wrapped his arms around me, started doing the Heimlich maneuver, and that jawbreaker would not come out. So I went limp in his arms. And when that happened, I floated above my dad and above my body. And I witnessed him struggling to save my life. I remember my mom going to the phone to call for help, my sister peeking around the corner to see what the commotion was. But I felt nothing but peace. I felt such love and nourishment. I knew I was being held in the arms of God or creator, whatever you call that higher power. And so as I looked below, I just remember thinking, like, oh, it's all okay. Everything's okay. My dad did something, by the way, you're not supposed to do. He used his thumb, pushed against the side of my throat, and he was able to get just enough leverage to get that jawbreaker out instead of pushing it back in. It was a very big risk. But he saved my life and he got me breathing that day.
I
So,
Wow.
yeah, it was one of those, like, my mom still to this day, she's like, I thought you were gone. I was sure that you were gone and you weren't coming back.
I mean, it almost seems like that was divinely inspired as well, because what are the odds he could push on your throat and get it to come back up? Like, even that alone was like that
Yeah.
somebody you were definitely being helped.
I agree. I agree. There had to have been angelic help there. And, it's interesting to me because I've had a lot of brushes with death, not quite full near death experiences. Like, I have one other that I'll share with you in a minute, but I've been stranded in the desert in Mexico. I've been on a plane that actually exploded. One of the engines exploded mid flight. Like, I have had many brushes and the angels are with me. My family jokes that, like, they're like, okay, if you're like a cat, you only have a few more left. Like, let's not push it. So yeah. So there's this little joke about it. But after that experience as a young child, we started to notice some differences. At least my mom did. And I started to feel very different. My dreams became very lucid. So I would be awake while having the dreams. And in fact, they were quite traumatizing. I had very terrifying dreams. I also became precognitive. I would know things before they happened. So one morning, for example, I'd woken up and I said, Mom, so and so's mom died last night. And my mom, her jaw hit the floor because she had just found out that so and so's mom had died. Right. So these things started to happen. But I was raised Catholic, and although very lovingly, I knew that people felt uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
so I just kind of buried that intuition and those senses. And I thought that there was something wrong with me. So I really felt like, in a way, that I had been cursed. I struggled a bit as a child, as a young adult, to kind of find my place. And, there was part of me that also became an overachiever, because I thought, well, I need to prove to God that he made the right decision in letting me stay again, a second time. So I became this people pleaser, overachiever, feeling like I was doing everything right, but feeling exhausted in that. So my first career actually was an EMT and firefighter. So because my dad had saved my life, I wanted to save lives too. But what started to happen is spirits started to come home with me. And I thought that I was really going crazy at this point. And I'm like, I have PTSD. Like, this is so bad. So I switched gears a little bit, got some dental training as well. And then I spent a good decade teaching in health sciences through my 20s. But in the middle of that career, I had my second near death. Now I'm 26 years old, so I'm an adult. And this experience was much different than the first. I was actually recovering from total knee reconstruction from an old injury that I had playing sports and skiing. And so I'm recovering at home, and I'm on crutches, and I'm hobbling from the kitchen to the living room or whatever I was doing. And I all of a sudden, just everything started to go black. So it was like the lights went out, and then the lights turned on, because what happened next was what I would call heaven. I was surrounded by these incredible beings of light, which I know to be angels. I knew it right away. But the colors were so magnificent, I can't even begin to describe them, because I've never seen colors that vibrant here. But they were so magnificent. And I remember thinking briefly about my family. And then before I knew it, that worry was gone. And I felt complete peace, complete euphoria, unconditional love. Like, everything that I had felt when I was 5 now kind of came rushing back, because I couldn't really understand it when I was younger. Right. And so now I'm having this experience. And I remember saying, oh, I'm staying here. Like, this is amazing. I want to stay. And as in many near deaths, they said, sorry, you have work to do. And so the next thing I knew, I opened my eyes to my brother-in-law, who had caught me when I had gone unresponsive. So what happened after that was, I wanted to say something, but I was afraid. I was very afraid I was going to be judged. I already felt so isolated, because I had all these gifts and I had all these knowings, and I had nobody to safely talk to about these things other than my mom a bit. And so it took me a couple days, and finally I was like, I need to tell somebody. Like, this was way too profound of an experience. Like, I need to tell someone. So a few days later, a girlfriend comes over. I'm still in recovery, but now we're having this conversation, and I'm telling her about this angelic story. I'm telling her I went to heaven. And my brother-in-law, who was the one that caught me when I went unresponsive, he overheard the story, and he came running into the kitchen, slammed his hand on the counter. He said, I knew it. I felt the angels too.
Oh my god.
So I get
I
goosebumps every time I talk about it, because it was like such a beautiful gift for me that he heard that, and that he validated my
Yes,
experience,
yes,
right?
yes.
And so he explained it, that when I went down, he couldn't find a pulse. I wasn't breathing. Like, he was about to call 911, and he was panicking. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, I just felt these energies. And he said, I heard them say, you're going to be fine. Just wait. And he said, within a few seconds of that, I opened my eyes with a smile on my face. I mean, it doesn't get any more magical than that, right?
No, it does not, and the ability to get the confirmation that it that
Oh,
you that everything your whole life was
yes.
you experience.
Real.
Yes, real, real,
Yes.
real.
And that was it for me, because remember, I came from science, right? Medical background, teaching background. It was all science, evidence based. And so I had this difficult contemplation of like, okay, is it real? If I experience it, does it become real? Like, all of those things, right? And so he validated it, and that was such a gift, like a gift that will forever give me life, because
Yes.
that experience was just what I needed. I knew after that that I needed to get my story out there in some way and start speaking to that. But a lot of people will go, they'll say, okay, so you had these two near deaths and now you've got it all figured out, you're enlightened. No way. So what happens with a lot of near death survivors is we want to go back to that heavenly place. And so now I was on the hunt for heaven.
Mm.
Okay. And I was looking in my career. I was looking in my love life. I was looking in building my family. I was looking in all of these things outside of myself for that heaven again. Guess what, folks? Not out there. It cannot be found out there, no matter how hard you try. I played the I'll be happy when game, I'll be happy
Yes.
when, and that's a losing game, right?
Yep.
And man, I played it for a good 5 years. And then finally was the real precipice for me. I just had my second child, who was a son. I was 6 months postpartum, and I was in a major depression. And I was so angry at myself that I couldn't be happy, even though I had this abundant life, even though I had everything that I had desired to achieve, and I was still miserable. So then I felt guilty and shameful that I was still unhappy. Like, what's wrong with me? So my depression was so thick for me and so heavy for me. I had actually decided that I was going to exit. I had decided that the only way to get to that heavenly place again was to take myself there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow. Wow.
So I got to this point where I was like, okay, how am I going to do it so that nobody finds me that I love? Or like, I'm starting to, think
Plot.
about how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plot. Yeah.
And that was scary
Yeah.
for me. So, thankfully my mom had taught me how to pray as a young child, with those dreams and stuff. I would pray, and so I prayed because I couldn't see any other path. Like, I just wanted to be free of the turmoil, the pain. Like, I was suffering so deeply. And I know some people might judge and say, well, how could you possibly leave your children when you're in a state of deep postpartum depression?
Yes.
I'm telling you, it takes over. And
You're
yeah,
not alone. I went through a health crisis for a decade, and I got so feeling like I was never gonna feel myself again, and I didn't
oh,
even have a near death experience to be, like, confident, like, "It's okay. I'm gonna go to a great place." Like, I was just like, "I know I can't stay here like this. I gotta go."
oh,
So I
yeah.
I you know, and I didn't wanna leave my family, and I certainly did wanna leave or live, but I didn't wanna live the way I was living, so I understand exactly what
Thank
you're
you.
talking about. Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that, because I think there's actually a lot of people that
yes.
get to that place. And so I was so lucky that I just prayed, because I said, okay, God, the only path that I see is this. If I'm supposed to stay, you better show me another path. Like, I demanded it. And the most beautiful thing happened. This beautiful energy showed up, which I know to be an
Oh
angel.
my god.
And I was shown this entire vision of what I needed to create. So it was so potent and so powerful. The next morning, I just got up and I said to my husband at the time, I said, okay, I'm starting the first holistic healthcare system in the world, and I'm going to do it. And he said, this is brilliant. I said, okay. And I poured my life into that. And that gave me life. It gave me life at that time.
Yeah.
And what that did for me is it started to lead me into these opportunities where other spiritual people were. And I learned about the Akashic Records, your soul's library. And I went and took the course as a skeptic, of course, with my medical background. And I took that course and I was blown away at the magic. I started to go on my soul journey.
Yes.
And now here we are.
I I love that because I'm in a similar like, I also, from what I understand, you had some health issues yourself that you were trying
Mhm.
to heal from, and
That's
that's
right.
kinda how my soul journey started,
Mhm.
was trying to heal my body and seeking
Yes.
health, and the Western medicine system wasn't giving me any
Yeah.
answers, so you had to think outside the box at that point, and I started getting into energy healing and Reiki and doing, um, shamanistic, plant medicine journeys and opening
Oh,
up to other the fact that we were energetic beings, and then it's just led into this
yes.
podcast, and it's led into me opening up to an entirely different period of my life. So
Mhm.
I'm so identifying with your journey that it feels very familiar to me. And I think there are so many of us out there for whatever reason that are stepping on their own path and starting to understand that there's more to us than what we think.
Mm.
And,
So much more.
you know,
Yes.
speaking of your holistic medical business that you started, from what I understand, you ended up giving that away. It was like a super
I
like
did.
successful business, and you gave it away in like a contest or
I
something.
did. Total, like people joke, they're like, "You're the modern day Willy Wonka." There was no gold ticket or anything, but yeah, I did a contest because I had built that company for 7 years, a multiple figure company. I had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, but I got to kind of the fork in the road where they said, "Okay, are you continuing to build this spiritual business, or are you growing this holistic healthcare system? What are you doing here?" And I knew very, very strongly in my heart that I needed to continue on the spiritual entrepreneurial path. And so it was a really easy decision, actually. A lot of people, they said, "You're crazy. Like, how could you put all this money in and all this time in just to give it away?" But honestly, that business had given me life, remember?
Yes.
And so I didn't feel like it was my place to charge and to try and sell that business. It didn't feel right for me. And so even though people didn't understand it, it was actually a really easy decision for me. And so I had this fun little contest. People got to, put in an essay, and then they had to do certain things and tasks and collect points. So I ran it about over 6 months, and then I chose a winner. And that process was just so uplifting and so beautiful, and I loved every minute. Now, unfortunately, that company is no longer, but I know that it did what it was meant to do for the next person,
Mhm.
and I know that it did exactly what it needed to do for me.
Everyone needs to hear that story, in my opinion, because I think one of the biggest misnomers out there is that making as much money before you die is the only way to
Mm,
live a successful, happy
mhm.
life. And it really is much more about serving others and giving than it
It
is
is.
about, you know, profit and greed. And I
Mm,
just think the world of you that
mm,
you would make that leap and do something like that, because you just don't see that out there very much. You just don't see it in our culture, in our
mm.
humanity. You don't see people doing that very often.
It's true, and I do really believe in the generous heart, and that has always served me well. I know that we have this definition of being in service, like if you're in service, you're not to get anything in return, but the true definition of service is knowing we get something in return.
Yes.
Because when I did that, I felt so good inside.
Yes.
So I was winning.
Yes.
I was winning because I felt amazing. And not only that, it gave someone else an opportunity to step in,
Yes.
and it opened the floodgates for my spiritual business.
Yes.
There was this little meme that was floating around for a while, and it was an image of a little girl holding a little teddy bear, and in front of her was Jesus hiding a giant teddy bear. And Jesus is gesturing for the little girl to hand over the little teddy bear, but she doesn't want to because it's so comfortable. But yet, if she would let go of the little teddy bear, she'd make room for the big teddy bear.
Yes.
And that holistic company was my little teddy bear. And letting go of that made room for so much more for me. And I just invite the listeners to think about, what is your little teddy bear right now
Yes.
that maybe you need to let go of, that's going to open up the floodgates, because it really did for me. And it does every time I let go of that little teddy bear. I'm telling you, it's like magic.
I love that idea, and people should let go of that teddy bear.
Mhm. You bet. You got it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now for people, your your spiritual business, the
Mhm.
tell me all about it. What are you doing now to help others find their way, their mission, their gifts, all of it?
Well, I gotta say, I have a pretty big mission, and it is to create heaven on earth.
Mm,
Because of my experiences, I sought heaven, like I said, outside of myself. But the truth is, heaven can only be found inside of us.
yes.
We've got to tune into it within us first. Everything was innately given. Spirit has told me many times, in every given moment, you have everything you need and then some.
Yeah.
We just forget that we have the toolbox inside us with the happiness and the joy and with the knowledge and the wisdom and all of the things.
Yeah.
So we forget that we've got access to that. And we allow that ego mind, or in metaphysics, we call it the false mind. That false mind, by the way, has taken over most of us.
Yes.
And this is not anyone's specific fault. This is over thousands of years. Back in the cave people days, the ego was there to say, run from the predators, stay alive. And now it hijacks us with every decision that we're making. And many of us let it run the show. The
Yep.
truth is, we are meant to run the ego, not the other way
Yep.
around.
Yep.
That our divine thoughts, because we are multidimensional, so we have our higher mind or divine mind or God mind, whatever you want to call that, and the false self. And so we can start to step back and become an observer in that. And we can start to navigate so much more clearly the decisions that we make, the path that we're on,
Mhm.
rather than letting that ego mind hijack. And one of the tips that I have, and I feel compelled to share this right now, so I'm just going to share it with you,
Yes.
to befriend that ego, to make friends with the ego. It has a place, but you have to put the boundaries up.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, we could say a statement like, thanks, ego, but I've got this. But I invite people to go a step further. I love to give the ego minds a name.
Mm.
And so what happens when we do that is we start to separate ourselves from our other
Yes.
dimensions of ourselves. So once we can separate a little bit of that, then we start to see. Then we start to be the witness more. I had a client the other day, and I just love this so much. I have to share it. She called hers Ivana Gripe a Lot.
That's
Ivana Gripe
awesome.
a Lot. So she says, Ivana, yeah, get out of the way. You're in my way. Because the ego's so powerful.
Yes.
It really is so potent.
Yes.
I like to share this little story to remind us how potent it is. I was working on a final exam of a final class. I have a degree in health management as well. And I'm at the home stretch, the finish line, right? But I had failed a class or failed a test in the previous class, which I'd never failed before, but I rewrote it, was successful, whatever. And I thought I'd moved on. But while I'm writing this final exam for this final class, my ego is chiming in and it's saying, oh, you're failing. You don't have the answers. You're doing horrible. Da, 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 da. I finished the exam. I got to my car, bawled my eyes out. I was so upset because I had failed this exam and it was the last one and I just wanted to be done. I got home. I emailed my professor and I said, I know that I failed. Can you tell me what areas I really need to work on for the rewrite? And she emails me back. She says, I don't know whose test you think you wrote, but you got 87%.
Nice. Nice.
My ego had convinced
Yeah.
me I had failed.
Yeah.
And so that is such a reminder for us of how potent that ego can be. If we want to fall into the trap and listen to that story,
Yep.
most of the time it's not even true. And so that's why I feel compelled to share that particular story, because that to me is so profound in how powerful it can be. It can hijack us.
It's true. For me, my daily practice is trying to live more consciously instead of reacting to every single emotion. And I guess that is your ego, that gut emotion that everybody gets, whether that be fear, whether that be self-doubt, whether that
Yeah.
be unworthiness or whatever you're
Yeah.
feeling particularly guilty or shameful about that day.
Mhm.
you know?
It's our thoughts that lead to the emotion,
Yeah.
right? So if thoughts come up around a story attached to whatever it happened,
Yeah.
right? Then it leads to the feeling. And then we're feeling upset or we're feeling triggered because we've got this story that ego is playing for
Yeah.
us, right? So, anyway, that's one of the powerful pieces that I love to share with people, because it changed my life in
Yeah.
understanding that. And what that did in getting that boundary in place with the ego is it opened up the channel to divine.
Yes.
So just naturally now divine can work through me, my higher self, again, your God self, whatever you reference that as. And, you know, there's some powerful things that I've learned along the way. One is that divine is our supply.
Yeah.
Divine is a supply. And so, you mentioned like greed and having profit all the time. It's not about that, because divine is the ultimate supply. The supply is not coming from my clients. It's not coming from my book sales. It's coming from divine, So like we know that any profit, any money we make ultimately comes from divine. And when we know that, when we trust that, we don't worry about it either, because we're no longer in scarcity, because we know that in every given moment we have everything we need and then some.
Yep.
And so in knowing that and trusting that, we actually can manifest more, we attract more abundance, we become magnets for all of the goodness.
Yes. Yes.
So that's part of that creation of heaven, and recognizing that we have this direct connection to divine. I used to think that God was like a man in the sky, and you'll hear me reference God as he sometimes. I don't actually have, a he or a she. It doesn't matter to me. But the point being is that I recognize now that I have such divinity within me, and I have all of the access that I need to that.
Mhm.
And so building that relationship is what has allowed me to create heaven within myself. And because of that, I now get to witness heaven outside of myself too, which is such a cool thing.
It's a lot of self-empowerment too. It really is taking your power back in a way, just dabbling in the topic of organized religion for a minute. I find that organized religion, you really are looking to somebody else. You have to go through your priest, your pastor, your elder to get through that higher source, or that
Mhm.
being that you're trying to get, you know, touch. And it's not necessary. It really lies within. And I think that's one of the big misnomers about organized religion. How do you feel about organized religion? How does that fit into your wheelhouse these days? How you
Great question. Yeah. So I actually am a reverend of metaphysics. So I'm working on my PhD in metaphysics right now. So in the practice of metaphysics, we don't think there's a right or wrong in terms of like how you believe God is, but we don't believe in using fear to control or to have power over another. So the idea is that like we welcome all ways of thinking, all ways of being. And then what we do is we just really focus on that connection with our inner God. So that's the big focus of the metaphysical practice, is recognizing God within us, and then from there building that relationship. This is like my favorite relationship. If you have a good relationship with yourself or God within you, all your other relationships get better and better too. Again, it's a reflection. So if we work on these inner relationships, well, now all of a sudden we've got this outer world that is like so magic and so full of miracles every day. So that's kind of my perception. So even though I was raised Catholic, I don't see myself fitting into any one particular religion. I believe in this umbrella of, there's who am I to say who's right or wrong?
yeah.
But other than the fact of like removing fear from your belief system, I think that's really important. And I caution my clients whenever they're getting part of any spiritual group, if the spiritual group is coming in and saying, oh, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen, or if you don't keep doing what I say and paying me all your money, this is going to happen. I had a client who had invested over $10,000 with a psychic who told her that if she didn't continue, she was never going to find the love of her life.
Oh my god.
And the woman was so desperate, she just kept paying into that. And so there are people out there like that. So that's why I always say, like, if they're using fear in any way to control, then they might not be of God. They might not be of the light.
Which is like which is like almost every organized religion on the planet.
Right? Even in my Catholic upbringing, I thought I had to feel so guilty and so shameful if I did anything that was remotely wrong.
Yes.
And so I sat with guilt and shame much of my life, which is why I got to the place I did and wanting to leave this plane, because I felt so riddled with guilt and shame.
Same. I grew up in that's why I became an atheist. I was an atheist for most of my life until I ended up getting sick because of that. Like, I was made to go to church 3 times a week. My family was all hellfire, brimstone. It never
Mhm.
felt right to me. I was always like, "This cannot be the way it is. We're the only ones going to heaven. Everybody else is going to hell. And if I did this, I'm gonna go burn. This can't be what." Like, I was just like, this, my inner knowing, my inner being, whatever that, your intuition was like, "Nope,
Yes.
nope."
No.
So I went atheist route. I was like, "You know what? I don't believe in religion. I don't believe that there's a man in the sky that is judging me, and I just don't believe that. And then, things happen in life, and maybe I like to say on this show, sometimes you have to be shaken to awaken. And I was
Yeah.
shook to my core and
Mhm.
really had to completely reevaluate what my belief system was.
Yeah.
And
It's something else, isn't it amazing though? Like how you swung the pendulum,
yeah,
so far to the other side, but now you found your sweet spot. And I
yes,
think a lot of us go through that because we're like, well, we don't know what to believe.
yeah,
I'm telling you that if we lean into the relationship with ourselves, we will know the truth. We will know the truth, and it's okay to trust your own knowing.
yeah.
I can't even tell you how many people that come to my path are like, I didn't trust my intuition. Like,
Mm,
I didn't know I could trust it. And we're all so highly intuitive, you guys. We have this incredible inner technology, this inner
yes.
technology that for many, many years we've been told not to trust. But I'm telling you, it is magic. And this is one of the things that I do now is I teach people how to use their own Akashic records so that they can go into their own soul's library. So the Akashic records, I don't know if you've ever talked about on the show.
I have briefly, but that was literally you're leading me into the next question. That was going to be my next dive into was the Akashic records.
I
So
love it. The
perfect.
intuition, the
Yes,
surfing. See? Um,
we're in a flow. We're in a flow.
yeah, I love it. I love it. So, the Akashic Records is a space of consciousness that we step into. Now, you can enter it through a prayer. Like some people, when they're meditating too, they're tuning into the Akash. They just don't know it. So, it's a place of consciousness in which I kind of think of it as my meeting place with God. Where I can just go and be in this safe and sacred space. But I use a prayer, and so I open the records using this prayer, and then when we go in there, everything is amplified. So I can have intuitive insight in there. I can do healing in there. People often say, "Well, hey, I do Reiki. Can I use the Akashic records?" Yes, and it'll amplify the Reiki. So because we're at this like higher vibrational frequency, we're dialed in. So information is coming in more clearly and with more depth and with more honesty and integrity. So that's what I love the Akash because it creates the container, the safe container. People will often say, "Well, what's the difference between like just an intuitive reading?" And I don't even want to say just an intuitive reading because an intuitive reading can be very powerful as well. However, we're kicking it up a few notches when we go into the cache and then do intuitive work from that space. And everyone can access the records, by the way.
Can you tell us a little story of how you have transformed or helped somebody through using this process, the Akashic records?
Oh, so there's a lot of different stories I could share, but I'm going to share a little bit of my own story because, like I said before, I went in as a skeptic. So I took the course thinking, like, there's no way people can do this stuff, again, science background. So I went in, took the class, and all of a sudden I'm getting these insights. I'm seeing these images, I'm seeing these things, and I'm just describing them to the other person. And the other person's like, oh my God, that means this. And I know what that is. And they're having these incredible discoveries. So I was like, oh, wow, like there is something to this. And so over time, you build a relationship with the Akash. It's kind of like I describe it as like if you were to learn how to play the guitar, like a Pearl Jam song, like you're going to have to practice a few times, right? In order for you to really get it, for you to play it really well. And the Akashic Records is an instrument, right? And so it just takes a little bit of practice. But I'll use an example of a client who had come to me and they were really struggling with their relationship, their husband. And in fact, she was headed for a divorce.
Mm.
And I said, okay, like you think you've done everything, but there's like one more thing. And so this came in through the Akashic records, and the invitation was for her to do a meditation with her husband's higher self. So, where she would call in her husband's higher self and she would take her higher self and she would imagine them having a conversation, the conversation that she tried to have that he wasn't hearing, the conversation of everything that she needed him to get. And so she had this meditative experience. And the next morning, her and her husband wake up and he rolls over and he says, honey, I've been thinking, I've really messed this up and I need to start making some changes.
Wow. Like,
So
wow.
And I mean, that's not going to happen every time. Okay. This is just one example of many where when people are willing to do the work and they're willing to work in these higher levels of consciousness, there's a ripple, there's a trickle down from that. I mean, I've telepathically communicated with people all over the world, and you guys do it too. You think of somebody and then the phone rings, or they send you a text message or an email, right? How often has it happened for you?
Yeah.
We are actually more tuned in and dialed in. There's like this beautiful, beautiful connector that connects all of us. And so we have the ability beyond most of our comprehension to be able to work in this higher vibrational state and frequency. And that can really help us to get out of our own way. And in particular, also get that ego out
Yes.
of the way.
Yes.
Because again, most of us are in this like zombie mode, and the ego is completely hijacked because we've been conditioned through whatever broadcasting,
Yeah. Our
which by the way
schooling. Yeah.
our schooling, right, to think a certain way. And so we've been taught to be so far removed from our true self
Yes.
that we are in some ways the walking zombies in the world.
We are the proverbial we're asleep. It's like we are not truly conscious of everything, that we are so much more than what we think we are, and we our belief
Mhm.
systems don't allow us to see it, to feel it, to sense it. We're just
Mhm.
unable to focus like that. And we live in a really distracted world where everybody's working 3 jobs and, you know,
That's
trying to raise
peace.
children, and it's just so running uphill every day. And
Yeah.
it's you know, I find that, I know you've had a your why don't we talk a little bit about your healing journey and how you came back with your health,
Mhm.
and how it is that we live in a world where almost everyone is sick, whether it be from a mental
Yeah.
unwellness, from depression, or their cancer, or it's
Mhm.
diabetes, or
Yeah.
it's just, I feel like our society is sicker than ever. So let's talk about how you healed and our society in general.
Thank you for that. They're showing studies that say that our children will not outlive us.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Yes. So, like, when I heard that, I was just like, oh my God, the work in the holistic healthcare system that I had created was so important to me. I was born fairly sick. So I was a sick little kid. I was in and out of the hospital, bronchitis. Eventually, actually, just before I think my near death, I had my tonsils out, which is also very interesting. Lots of throat chakra kind of
Mhm.
stuff going on there. Um, and and then so that led to big stomach problems. So they thought I had endometriosis. So then I had surgery, and then oh my gosh, well, now you've got Raynaud's disease, cold hands, cold feet kind of thing, circulation issues, fibromyalgia. Like, I just kept getting all of these diagnoses, and eventually I found my way to a homeopathic doctor. And that opened my eyes up because I was like, oh, this whole world of like Western medicine, like now we're getting to the real medicine, right? And I will not, there is a place for medicine, okay, for Western medicine,
Yes.
but our own healthcare system was built upon the need for acute illness. This is like emergencies. This is for, an immediate illness that we need help with. That's what the medical system was originally built around. But now we've got this chronic illness epidemic happening, and our system wasn't made for that. And so there's this whole other system of holistic living that really was to help us stay healthy. And so, as I went through my process, mostly in my 20s, I did a lot of deep healing work. And I actually cured myself of fibromyalgia, by the way. I've been told I do not have that. Um, and part of that process for me was understanding that there are so many resources out there, but most of us get really overwhelmed. We don't know where to start. We're already sick and tired. So when you're sick and tired, you don't have the capacity to look for all the resources. So my whole idea with the holistic healthcare system was that we would create the path for people where we would say, okay, you have these issues. Here's all the things that you need in order to overcome it, right? Or here are the things to try. Because I mean, it's not a one size fits all either.
It can be a game of whack-a-mole when you
It
have
is.
a undiagnosed
Mm,
issue and the doctors can't seem to help
yeah.
you, you really can whack-a-mole. You're trying I went through that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
there
Me
really
too.
isn't anything out there that I haven't done. I've done
Yeah.
ozone, I've done peptides, I've done hyperbaric chambers, I've
All the
I
time.
mean, all, high dose
Yeah.
vitamin C, like, everything I have pretty much done, and quite frankly, if you don't have the resources to go down that track, that could be yet another issue because a lot of this stuff is not covered by insurance,
True.
and Western medicine is fine. I think if you have a broken arm, it's great to go and get it set. I think if you need a heart transplant, that could come in really handy.
Absolutely.
But if you have something that is chronic, that is not something unless they can give you a pill, you're not going to get cured, I can tell you that.
Even with a pill,
Yes.
we, it comes actually back. What we have found is that it comes back to a spiritual root almost
Yes.
always. So it's something within us, either from even a past life or ancestral trauma that is stored within our cells, within our DNA. And so we have this beautiful opportunity to build a healthy, again, relationship with our physical form. I think that for a long time, I rejected my physical body because I was angry. I'm like, you can't keep up. You're always sick. You can't go out and play with all your friends because you're too sick, all of that. So I had such resentment towards my body. And I realized, out of all the bodies my soul could have chose, it was very lovingly specific. It said, oh, okay, out of all these thousands of other babies I could have been, my soul said, that's the family, that's the life, that's what I need for my highest evolution. My soul loved me so much that it was willing to choose this body so that I could go through these experiences, that I could be led down this path. Everything in life, you guys, it's like a spiritual breadcrumb or a directional signpost to tell us where to go next.
Yes.
Had I not had these illnesses, I might have not started the holistic healthcare system, which is what gave me so much life and gave me the renewal that I needed at a time of despair. Right. So now I have this really beautiful, loving relationship. I've forgiven myself. I've forgiven my body. I've asked my body to forgive me as well. And I've gone through all of that work. And so even though there might still come up health challenges from time to time because of the environment that we are in, there's all this energy that we cannot see that is not good for our bodies. I'm not going to go into vaccinations or any of those things, but there's all of these toxic things. Even our food is not healthy the way that it used to be. It doesn't have the nutrients from the soil, like all of these things now on the outside, our bodies have to contend with.
Yes.
And so I think there's this big invitation for us to build a deeper relationship with our physical form, because our physical form will tell us. My body now will tell me if I should eat something or not. So I'll give you an example. The kids wanted McDonald's a while back, and we don't do McDonald's very often, but every now and then. And I thought, oh, I'll just grab a chicken burger. I went to eat that chicken burger. I took a bite, and my throat literally would not let me swallow it. I had to spit it out. I was looking forward to that McChicken, but I could not eat it. So that went in the garbage. My body gave like a hell no on that. It was like, no, you're not doing it. So, so lo and behold, I didn't eat the McChicken burger, but my body really allows me the opportunity when I'm still enough, when I'm willing to listen, it gives me the opportunity to say, yes or no, this is gonna give me a higher vibrational frequency, or it's gonna sink my frequency, and then I have a choice in that.
It's tough. Eating these days is it's quite hard to find food that your body is not that's not filled with toxins these days. I don't know. That's a whole nother podcast, but like our health, our food in this country is another system in which it only kind of works for very few, and most of us are having to, ingest food that our bodies can't even process half of it. It's just nuts. Um, okay, let's talk about manifestation and what you've learned and
Ooh.
in the quantum realm. And let's talk a little bit about how we are much more capable of being co-creators of our own reality through using manifestation and the quantum.
So we actually all have the ability to manifest. And a lot of people, they're like, well, I've been focusing on getting that house or that car for so long and it's still not happening. There's a lot of layers to that. Oftentimes there's deeply rooted blocks or imprints energetically within their system that are stopping them. But what happens most often is people get so attached to an outcome. When we get really attached to the outcome, we actually hold it hostage. So it's one thing for me to visualize something happening. It's another thing for me to be now attached to it and needing it to look a certain way. So in metaphysics, the mystics call this idea that everything that shows up is exactly what we need for our highest good. They call that continual expectancy.
Hmm.
So continual expectancy doesn't mean that I have a specific expectation of an outcome, but rather I have an expectation that whatever it is that does show up is exactly what it needs to be for my highest good. So I believe this without a shadow of a doubt. And so I might have that vision of like having my book become award winning movies. Okay, that's one of my visions, but I'm not attached to that. I'm not attached to how it happens. I'm not attached to what it has to necessarily even look like. I just am putting it out there. I'm trusting that if it needs to get that message into the world in that way, that it will happen. And I'm using that as an example because I did just finish my book called The Ark, which is based on my near death experiences, but through fantasy fiction that follows the story of a girl with gifts. She ends up having a well, she dies and goes to heaven. And in heaven, she experiences lessons and learnings on the way. And so when I was writing this book, I kept seeing it as a movie.
Mhm.
It kept showing up as a movie. And I'm like, okay, is this meant to be a movie? And I heard the answer yes. So about 6 months ago, I'm thinking about, this being a movie and seeing it on the big screen. And I'm allowing myself to tune into that frequency. And I don't know how it's going to happen. I know nobody in film. I know nobody in Hollywood or none of
You
that.
you do now. That's so
This is the magic of manifestation. So let me tell you what happened last week, right? Okay. So I can't wait to hear about what you have to say about this because this is mind blowing, you guys. This is manifestation real time here. Okay. So anyway, I get invited to go to this event in LA through a coach of mine. And I'm like, I don't even know what this event is about, but she's like, you should really just come. And I'm like, okay, I'll come. Well, I didn't know I was going to be in the room with producers or actresses or influencers. And I get there, and now I'm meeting this award winning producer who wants to do my movie. I'm meeting this actress who wants to lean in, and all these people are showing up who are loving the book and just talking about how brilliant it is, and I'm just like, what is happening? And it's because I didn't hold it hostage,
Mm.
right? I didn't get attached to it needing to look any way. And look, now here you're showing up, and I can't wait for us to have a conversation after the show now. So, like, all of these beautiful, magical things are now starting to just show up because I just surrendered to it needing to look whatever it needed to look like for my highest good and the good of others. So I trust in that. The other thing a lot of people miss in the manifestation process is you can't just think it.
Mm.
You have to feel it. You have to embody it. So when I'm imagining sitting in that movie theater with my movie on the big screen, I'm like feeling the joy of that. I'm feeling the excitement of that. I'm feeling the shivers run down my body as I tune into that frequency. So we're really tuning into that frequency. And then the other thing is we've got to meet the universe halfway. If I want to win the lottery, I should probably buy a lottery ticket, right? Like chances are more likely. Just like I need to show up for myself, I need to take those opportunities to go different places and expand myself. So that's another piece of it. Now, you also asked about the quantum field. And so I just want to speak to that for a moment. When we go into the Akashic records, it really is a quantum field, by the way. And so there's different ways and different theories on how you can tune into the quantum field. But I love to use the Akashic records. And within the Akashic records, there's like different zones. There's the zone of choice, there's the zone of freedom, and there's the zone of possibility. And I will take my clients into the zone of possibility where we can see all the infinite numbers of timelines. And then we can find the one that's there for our highest vibrational good at that moment, let that light up, and then we step into that timeline.
I love
So we can actually go into that timeline and we can actually stay in that timeline. We don't even need to bring ourselves back to this timeline necessarily because now we're just walking into that path and allowing it to come into the space. I've heard stories of people that have done quantum leaping, and one story in particular comes up. I think it was out of Mind Valley, um, and a man had gone to another timeline, learned how to play the piano, or get got whatever knowledge, and then he came back and he could play the piano
Oh
without
my
any
god.
training or. So, like, there's stories like that that come out of these incredible experiences of tuning into that vibrational frequency.
Oh
We
man.
have choice in every breath we take. There are multiple timelines. Like, I could say something just a little bit different, and now I'm on a totally different kind of dimensional frequency, right? And so we can pivot at any given moment. Every breath is a new opportunity for something amazing.
I love that. We really could be, if people would open their minds and allow this information in enough to be able to transform how they feel, how they live. You could transform the world if people would start just tapping into their own inner knowing, their ability to co-create and vibrate in a way that only allows our highest and greatest in. We would we would solve the health crisis, we would solve wars, we would solve poverty. There would be so many things that would just completely and utterly and totally change on this planet. I do feel that there's more people awakening to this. If
Yeah.
you, for those out there that are listening that are maybe just starting to dip their toe in the spirituality of it all, what is your advice for navigating this new path? Because let's face it, we as humans, it's hard for people to step out of their comfort zone. If you have been raised in the church, or if you have raised in a family where you're being very judged for what you think, what you say, what you believe, it can be a very daunting to change your belief systems and still be accepted in your tribe or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it is tough because you do lose people as you continue to evolve and you come into deeper truths of yourself. It's just part of the natural progression of our evolution that people will just slough off, right? Or you will feel some sense of rejection. And I've had to face that a lot, but I really truly believe in speaking my truth.
Yeah.
And I know that this is serving the highest divine good of all. So, one of the things that I encourage people is to know that there are people like them. They are not alone. And I felt really alone in my journey. And that's also why I wrote this book, because I didn't want people to feel so alone in their journey. And so that's a really big thing. Like, we are here in droves, that there's actually lots of us, and more of us are speaking out and sharing our messages with the world so that we can connect more easily. But one of the things that I love to remind people of is to allow that sense of awe and wonder rather than coming at it from a place of judging this person for being where they're at or judging that person. Let that go, because, by the way, it's not judgment day coming, it's compassion day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there is judgment will go away because that ego will be put where it's supposed to be and there will be no judgment. We'll be free of that. But what I'm saying here is this sense of awe and wonder, like invoking that childlike curiosity and just saying, "Oh, that's interesting you feel that way. I wonder what that's about." Right? Or this experience showed up for me not the way I thought it was going to. I wonder what's in it for me, because there's value in all things. God is in everything, even the shitty experiences. Can I use that word?
Yes, you
um,
can. Yeah.
in those experiences, there is such gold there. We
Yeah.
can leverage that. Everything is for us,
Yeah.
right? And so there's this beautiful opportunity for us to even soak in the magic of even the most difficult times for us. But we've got to be willing to look at it through that lens of awe and wonder and say, ooh, okay, this happened. It does not feeling very good, but I wonder what's there for me. I wonder what I can pull from that experience. Remember, everything's a directional signpost for you. So you're getting your life education as you move through it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, or even ask your question, if it's something shitty, what is this trying to teach me? What am I
Yeah,
supposed to be learning here? There's
that's it.
something, some little nugget of something that I'm going to get out of this experience, and kind
Yeah,
of trying to switch your perception on that. Um,
yeah.
we're coming up at an hour. I want to hear a little bit more about your book and what people can expect when they read it. Like, can you go into a little bit more detail about the book or?
Yes, of course, of course. So, like I said, it is based on my real near deaths, but I didn't want it to be exactly the same because as I started writing it, and I was writing it as more of like my like autobiography, kind of like I was like building it, and then God just said, "This isn't yours. This is not your story. It's the story of all of us." And so I knew that I had to let that go and surrender to it. Now, I had never written a fantasy fiction novel, by the way. I had written in other co authoring books, but again, it was more like my story. So building characters and all this stuff was like totally new to me. So I had wrote it all out. And by the way, I wrote this over the course of almost 2 decades. So this
Oh,
was
wow.
almost 20 years in the making. And so I had wrote everything out. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? Like, I don't know where to start. And lo and behold, the student comes into one of my classes and lovely, lovely human being. Her name is Darlene. She used to be a writer, but she's retired and now she just wants to learn more intuitive stuff. So she's taking my class. And at the end of class, Spirit just gave me a nudge to reach out to her. And I said, hey, I know you're retired from writing, but like, would you have a look at this book? Well, I sent it to her and she says, oh my God, I need to help you with this book. I'm coming out of retirement. So she decided that she was going to take this book and sprinkle her magical fairy dust. So, Darlene Butts, shout out to you. We're actually working on the second book already, and we're co-channeling it.
Oh,
So,
that's
most
cool.
of this book was channeled, by the way. Um, Darlene, because of the courses that she took and how intuitive she was able to like draw from the ether. Like she would send me like revised versions of what I wrote, and I'd be like, I don't think I wrote this. Like, how do you know this? She goes, I didn't know that. And she would have it in there. So like there's bits of that happen throughout. Like
That's
it was
amazing.
oh, it was so incredible. It was like goosebumps all the time. Every time she would send me a chapter, I would get goosebumps reading it because it'd be like, how the hell does she know this? But again, it was the trust of the divine. God was speaking through us. And so it was such a beautiful exchange of energy that we had. And, she described it. She goes, well, you built the furniture. And she said, I just painted it. But she did more than paint it. She delicately carved, like I can't even.
Gave her the
So
artistry of the design of the yeah, 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 yeah.
like she made it what it is. So
Yeah.
I just give so much respect to her. But anyway, so it follows the journey of a character named Celeste, and Celeste has a near death. Goes through this like I have these gifts, but they feel like curses. Nobody else is like me. I don't know what to do. Fast forward when she has an experience where she has another near death experience and she goes to the angel realm, which is called the ark, and she spends time with the angels, and the angels teach her all these wonderful profound spiritual insights and these tools to help her. And so now she's on a mission that she's got to bring these back to earth and be able to help humanity. So it is a trilogy. So this is the volume one of 3 books. Yep. So the second book we're working on already. The second book brings us more into like the fairies and the dragons, like a little bit more mystical energy. And then the last book actually brings in the story of AI and galactic energy. So it's going to progress through kind of the phases of what we're experiencing here right now as humanity evolves. So this I know is a message, and the stories need to come out to the world. I've been guided by God to deliver this to the world, and so that's what we're doing.
I love it so much. You are a force, my friend. You really are. I mean, I hope we stay in touch after this and really stay connected because I think you have a lot to teach others, and you're a gift, my friend Reverend Rose Hope. You are a
Oh,
gift. I
thank you so much.
I mean,
Thank
I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I would love it if people go out and pick up this book. I absolutely think it's going to touch many, many lives. And full disclosure, I work as an assistant director in the television and film.
Oh, of course you do. See, again, God knows what
You
it's
know,
doing.
it's it's
Okay, you
it's
know.
it's
Oh,
it's interesting, isn't it? It really is interesting. Um,
isn't it?
what else can we talk about? Your podcast is When Spirit Calls. Is where can people listen in on that and get all the tidbits?
Yeah, that's pretty much on all the platforms. Spotify, you got it. When Spirit Calls. And so I bring in guest speakers from all walks of life that share their story when Spirit called them in, where they were guided or directed to go one way or another, and how they serve humanity. So that's been a beautiful passion project of mine as well. And then I also have the YouTube channel where I put on their wisdom walks every month, where a different theme drops in, and I just walk and share. So that's available for people as well. And, I love gifting. So we are going to make sure that you have a link for the show notes for our event coming up called 7 Days of Creation in January,
Oh,
where it's just you come online, and for 7 days, I'm going to guide you through the Akashic records for 7 days. And we're going to really increase your ability to manifest and increase your vibration. So you're magnetizing all that goodness that you're desiring in life.
sign me up. I mean, I don't. I. The other thing is that one of the beautiful things about having a near death experience is that it really does take the fear out of dying, doesn't it? Like you probably don't fear death, do you?
Not at all. Not at all.
What a gift is that?
It's such a gift. It is such a gift. I mean, it's a gift within a gift within a gift, I think, But yeah, I feel very lucky. I mean, I feel like I have so much work to do. So that would be the only thing that would, like, I wouldn't want to go because I'm like, oh, but I got so much left I want to do. But I also know that when I go, I'm not going to care about all the things that I had on my to do list either.
Mm-mm.
So, it's so interesting how we in our humanness still have some of these default mechanisms
Yeah.
where the ego comes into play. But
And and
yeah,
and you're not gonna go until you're meant to go. Like
I
that's the other
I
thing.
so believe it. I so believe that. And
Yeah.
I also want to give this caveat too. Please don't self-induce your own near-death experience. It's not necessary to go on the spiritual path, okay? You can simply make a conscious choice. And there's lots of ways to have very cool spiritual experiences these days through breath work and different journeys you can go on. So I just want to give that
Yeah.
caveat before we go.
We are not
Uh,
promoting that here on this show. No,
right?
thank you.
Yeah, please don't.
No.
Yeah.
No, that might not turn out so well for for the average
Right?
bear
Yeah.
there.
Yes,
You might not get
exactly.
that lucky. Um,
Right? Yeah.
well, Reverend Rose Hope, I am going to
Mhm.
leave it there. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I hope I have made a new friend. I think that
Yes,
you are
indeed.
definitely a force
Oh,
out there for good, and we need more of you. And let's
mm.
keep in contact. And anytime you want to come back on the show and promote a new book or a new business venture or anything that you're touching out there, I am welcoming you back anytime you'd like to come. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I have loved every
I
minute. What a
mean,
beautiful conversation. And you yourself are just such a glowing, radiant human being. So thank you for being an earth angel. So, we often are reflections of each other, aren't we, at the end of the day? So I thank you so much for holding the space for me to share and welcoming me with such open, loving arms. Thank you.
I thank you. And on that beautiful note, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to call it a wrap on today's show, From Atheism to Enlightenment. I will see you all next week. And as always, welcome to your fate, gang. Journey well. Bye.
Bye.
And that is a wrap on this episode of From Atheism to Enlightenment. I hope you enjoyed this one. I gotta say, I love Reverend Rose Hope. I found her to be a force for good. I hope she is successful in every single thing she touches out there. From her giving away her business, that's unheard of, to her now out there helping others to find their own soul purpose, to find their own way, their own journeys, to opening up to who they are. We need more of that out there. So if you are on your path, just stepping on your path, or thinking about it, I would definitely look up Reverend Rose Hope, find her podcast, find her YouTube channel, and listen to what she has to offer. I think she probably has a wealth of knowledge. And I'm so thankful that she is out there doing what she's doing for people today. And love to have her back on the show. I absolutely would love to have her back on to promote whatever she has going on. And I don't know, I kind of think maybe a future friend is in store for us. I think that we had a vibe. We talked after the show. And, when you just have a feeling about somebody, you just like their energy. We kind of had that kind of groove going. We just liked each other's energy. So there you go. Between her near death experiences, which, again, disclaimer, we don't want anyone out there going to have a near death experience, but I'm a little jealous, not going to lie. I would love to be able to tap into a higher realm, the Akashic records, be more intuitive. I'm working on it. Let's see where life takes me, but right now, I'm just normal. Trying to navigate this world the best way I know how. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna put her book, The Ark. I'm going to put her upcoming event, and I'm gonna put all things Reverend Rose Hope in the show notes for you to click on and enjoy and experience what she has to offer. I highly recommend it. And speaking of recommending, if you like what I'm doing here, if you like what I'm saying, if you think I'm offering something good out there, subscribe, tell a friend, share, do something to support the show. I want to touch as many people out there as I can, and I need your help to do it. I can be reached on Instagram. It's F.A.T.E. Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show. I don't have a ton of followers yet. Not that social media savvy, I got to tell you, but I really, truly am enjoying this process. I'm loving bringing on people and talking about what their spiritual journeys are and what concepts they're bringing to me. And I am just enjoying every minute, and I'm going to keep dancing in this direction because, hey, that's what they say. You just follow your bliss and things will unfold as it's supposed to. And I am absolutely stepping into that notion that if I keep dancing in this direction, that only good will come of it. My highest and greatest good. That's the plan. Anyways, guys, we will see you next week on Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. And as always, welcome to your fate, everyone. Journey well.